Well, welcome to Family Hour of the Yahowah blog. We're a little different this evening, just as a matter of happenstance, but it's like turning back the clock 20 years. Dr. Jeff, you're here with me. We have you at home, and we can converse. We don't have our good buddy Captain Kirk, who was the second to become part of our family. He's made every effort to join us, but we are going back and forth with him, where either we can hear him or he can hear us, but we have not yet had anything reciprocal, which is what you kind of need to make this work, where he can hear us and we can hear him. He may get logged on, and we may be able to make this work going forward. We hope so. And we know that JB is out on a family thing. He's got the time off, and they're off, I believe, at the zoo, enjoying one another's company, which is a lovely thing to do. They're in Dallas, and Kevin, who is normally the one that gets everybody connected on this program, is out because his father-in-law has passed away, and therefore he's doing the appropriate thing and supporting his mother and his wife in this time of their grief. And so we will not have Kevin. We may get a Kirk if he can both listen and talk. He has tried to come back into the studio, and we'll just see if there's any way that works.
There's Kirk.
Hello, can you hear me?
There he is.
Yes, we can hear Kirk, but can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. So here we are. What we have here then is the old timers. We are the three that all go back almost 20 years together. So we'll have a family hour of the old guys. And that's a positive thing to do. One of the things that I wanted to return to, guys, since we're here together, is how I left the last episode here. We were talking about the conditions in the Gan Eden, and how we all over time are given this opportunity to learn. One of the number one thing that I came to understand as we were going through the narrative of Eden this time was that God was really quite disappointed in Adam, and that he showed no interest in listening to him. He showed no interest in working with him, and he certainly wasn't responsive or engaged in a way that God could rely on him. And so the idea of having Adam in a relationship with Yahowah outside of the constraints of that garden just wasn't going to work. And God's ultimate idea is not to have us locked in a garden or even locked on this planet, but to expose us to the entire universe that he's created of 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. It's so much more out there that he wants to share. It's just that Adam wasn't up to snuff, and he wasn't going to get there. And so what we find is that God trying to cultivate a very different kind of interaction than what he experienced with Adam in the garden. And he wants someone who is willing to learn from him. Otherwise, what's the point of having a relationship and being as smart as God is and having all this to share if those he's trying to do this with have no interest in learning from him and engaging with him? And what that took me to is this whole process of how we have developed in our understanding over the years. Because nobody ever develops any character until they have stumbled, until life gets to be tough, until something gets in the way that makes it hard. That's how we develop character. Not that either of you two guys have ever had a difficult time, right?
I play golf.
You play golf. Your hobby is golf, so you know all about it.
Yeah, I remember. I plead the fifth.
You played the fifth. Yeah, I know your history. You've had a few challenges, and when you overcome a challenge, it gives you great confidence, doesn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely. Because you know that life's going to bring another one, and when it does, you're proven that you can be counted on. You learn from it, and Kirk, I remember back in the day before you met the lovely Sylvia, that life wasn't quite as enjoyable as it is now. And of course, right now you're dealing with a health issue that is zapping your strength, making it really tough. But look with your big smile. So you're able to deal with a rough blow, and it's the way life's supposed to be. One of the problems I think with Adam is that because he was in a protected and sheltered garden, there were no challenges. Plenty of food, temperature was perfect, company was great. There were no threats of any kind, no obstacles. And under those circumstances, how do you grow? How do you prove to Yahowah that, if there is a problem, that you can get up and be trusted to grow from it? And so the whole idea is let's learn together. Let's grow together. Let's listen to what Yahowah has to say. And over time, develop a much more interesting relationship where we at least demonstrate that we're worth the time and effort, because Adam was not worth the time and effort. It's kind of a sad situation, but nonetheless, not only wasn't he worth the time and effort, there was no chance that he was going to get there, because for us to grow, we have to listen to Yahowah, and he didn't. And for us to grow, develop a relationship that's meaningful, everybody has to engage, and he didn't. And so one of the things we were talking about is that this relationship that we've all had and our development with Yahowah, we have grown in what we have come to know and what we have come to understand. And that while you do that, there are going to be new evidence that you're going to consider. If you're observant of Yah's testimony. So you're going to have new evidence that you're going to consider. And as you do, you're going to have the opportunity to derive more complete understanding from that evidence. And I remember that if you go back before the time that we recognized that Dowd was the not only the Messiah and Son of God, and therefore there could not have been a Jesus, because Dowd is the Messiah and Son of God, but that Dowd volunteered to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym. And once you realize that, it changes your whole mindset and your appreciation of really everything that's in God's story. Now you're able to see the greater and lesser luminaries for who they are in the fourth day of creation. You see the two trees of lives and of knowledge for who they are in the garden. And you recognize that this is how Yahowah made it possible for us to extend our lives and for us to resolve any issue in our lives by taking the guilt away. The guilt is literally deposited in Sheowl, never to be seen again. So we look perfect in God's eyes, innocent. And I recall for the longest time not knowing that, because boy, that was I think the single greatest discovery we have come to in all of the 24 years we've been studying. And it was hidden in plain sight. The only reason we didn't perceive it sooner is that it's been covered over by religious muck. The most prominent religion in human history has literally stolen Dowd's identity and created this myth of Jesus and piled all of their rubbish right on top of the truth. So it's very hard to get to the point where you say, wait a minute, there was no Jesus. It's nothing but a product of identity theft. The Messiah and Son of God who fulfilled Passover through crucifixion is Dowd David. He wrote about it. And that means it was Dowd who took our guilt into Sheowl.
Yeah.
And once you come to that point, you realize, there is no functionality here to ascribe to the spirit of Yahowah, the Ruach of Yahowah, covering our guilt, which is the way that I try to explain. Well, how in the world does Matzah work? How do we appear right before God? Until you know that Dowd took our guilt into Sheowl, you need some mechanism. And my conclusion at the time was, well, then it's the spirit of Yahowah that covers us in light, and where there is light, there is no darkness. But that really doesn't work for lots of reasons. One is God never mentions and there is no place where we're told that the spirit fulfilled Matzah. So you're writing her into it. And I wrote her into the story because, well, at Matzah, we're encouraged to approach the al-aqsa, which is fire, but it's written in the feminine form. And I made too big a deal out of that and said, well, it might be the, feminine manifestation of Yahowah's nature that we're supposed to be approaching, as opposed to recognizing that we approach the fire because that's the transformation. We get rid of our physical bodies and they are transformed into light energy so that our soul is enveloped in light energy. And that the spirit actually accompanied Dowd into Sheowl. Spirit didn't take our guilt there. All the purpose of the spirit was to protect Dowd's nephesh soul while he took our guilt there. And once you understand that, you don't need God to give you something to cover up your guilt, because it's gone. And that led to the realization that there is no role for the set apart spirit and the fulfillment of Matzah, and it's all through Dowd. And this is the way we learned. It's the way, once you read the Mizmor and come to realize that Dowd volunteered to fulfill Pesach and Matzah, you're in an entirely different mindset.
As you mentioned yesterday, Craig, that once Yah cast his spirit upon Dowd, his son, it was there to stay.
It's there to stay. You made it very clear. The spirit would never leave him.
To stay. It would never leave him. So it had to go with him into Sheowl to protect him, as you say, his nephesh.
Right.
So that it could.
So when Dowd, so what that means is that when Dowd was fulfilling Pesach, and he wrote in his own first person, my God, why have you separated from me?" Azab. He is describing the separation that he is now experiencing between himself and Yahowah, because he has to go to the place of separation. Correct? And so, and the very fact that the nephesh soul stayed with him and went into the place of separation with Dowd to protect Dowd there, it means that the Ruach cannot be Yahowah. That the Ruach is simply a projection of Yahowah's strength, or one of his attributes like wisdom or knowledge or courage, these kinds of things. But that the Ruach can't actually be Yahowah, because Yahowah can't go to the place of separation. So this extrapolation that the neo-pagans have made, and this vicious mother goddess cult, is absurd, elevating the Ruach to spirit mom, because the Ruach can't actually be Yahowah, because the spirit never left Dowd. Spirit protected Dowd's nephesh in Sheowl, and therefore the spirit is a projection of Yahowah's protection, strength in that regard. And we can take this the next step. There is an entire chapter of Yashay Isaiah devoted to the seven spirits of Yahowah, including the very spirit of Yahowah. And we know the spirit came upon Dowd. We know the spirit came upon Moshe. Was Moshe God?
No.
Was Dowd God?
Of course not. He's his son.
No. And
Elyon.
right, and yes, he was the influence of God. Elyon means that he was the influence of God, and that's what he's going to be going forward. The Towrah has 7 spirits of Yahowah. That Towrah represents the tree of knowledge. Last time I checked, I am not God. Now, I've got 7 spirits of Yahowah operating in me. It does not make me God.
No.
I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Thanks.
So, pretty certain of that. So I can tell you that the spirit cannot be God, because otherwise having 7 applications of the spirit, including the spirit of Yahowah, would make me God, and I'm not. So we just need to view things in the context of all that God has to say, and we're much more likely to form a correct conclusion regarding these things. You know, God even divided the Ruach that he had given Moshe among the 7 elders of Israel, and it didn't do them any good. I can tell you for certain it didn't make them gods. I didn't even help them. No. So, there's only 2 of them actually made it into the promised land. So, so we just have to recognize that the Ruach is like Yahweh's Nefesh. It's a tool that Yahweh can use to project himself wherever he would be, but it's a tiny aspect of what he is projecting. It's a tool that he would use. And once we recognize that, then we're in a position to refine our knowledge, and we did so, explaining how Dowd fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, Bikuwrym. I think it is one of the great discoveries in all of human history, because now you understand how vital it was for these books, these Yahowah books, to ultimately not only introduce Yahweh's name so we came to know Yahowah, but also to reintroduce his beloved son, Dowd David, correctly as our Savior, as the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym, so people can take advantage of it. And so one of the things that we're talking about is that once we realize that, so many of the other pieces of the story that God was telling us fell into place. You all of a sudden know how all of the other characters that God has written into his story intersect, and how they relate to one another, and how they contribute to all that God has to accomplish. And I remember that we go back to December of last year. We are without our social media manager, our webmaster, and our publisher. They all bolted on the same day, or within a week of each other. Yeah. And so the publisher was really helpful at highlighting aspects of these books that, and there's 35 of them, that we could update once we learned something new. And then had a template for updating them on the website, and immediately updating them once I dealt with them. She would give me the here's the passage that has the thing that you want to change, you want to improve, you want to refine. Here it is. And I would go through all 35 books. It'd take a long time to do this, but then she would be able to instantly update them on the website and at Amazon for printing. And so we ended up spending a lot of time. I bet it's a third of my time, maybe even half of my time, was updating the books. And, that's good. We kept them, current. When we learned something new, we shared it. Mm-hmm. But come December, with her gone, and at this point saying, so we don't have the webmaster anymore, don't have the publisher anymore, and what's the best? And the social media person bailed. So what is the best approach going forward? And it was then that Yahowah says, best approach going forward is we're going to change your approach, is what we're going to do. And first of all, I want you to start focusing on that menorah that's spinning over my left shoulder here, the one on the bookshelf right by me here. That's my symbol. And by the way, you also represent that symbol, as does Dowd. So we're going to go to that, and there is an easy solution to all of this. And he says, you're going to start talking to my people. You've learned what you need to know. You are the books now. You want to update something? We can update it instantly. Just literally, as you think it, you can update the record. And there is no more effective way now to communicate with people than there is through a vlog. You're going to be a blogger. I said, sure, yeah, okay, you're right. Well, I didn't actually say that because I've learned you don't ever question Yahowah when he wants something. But my mind was saying, a vlogger is, a kid that's still living in mom's basement. You don't have old guys that become vloggers. What do I know about that? You know how many posts I had presented on in social media at the time he said, I want you to be a vlogger? 0.
Oh, really?
Yeah, never. I had written 35 books, 25,000 pages of material. I was pretty good at writing. And he says, no, the marginal utility of one more book is very small. You're already overwhelming people with that books. Look at the books beyond on the shelves around it. The marginal utility of one more book is not going to make a difference. But you're talking to people will. And by the way, I wrote a prophecy about you talking to people, in fact, a bunch of them. So I appreciate if you'd honor the prophecies that I have made. So you were going to talk to people, and that way it's all instant. And today, the difference between the spoken and written word has changed. Because if you go back even 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, the only way to have a communication that was had viability over a period of time, credibility, that could be communicated in a way that you could be assured this is what the parties had stated, and that it was an enduring record of that was writing. They always used to say in a contract, if you've written it at all, you have written it all. Yeah. Because the written word was so much more credible than was the spoken word. That's why Yahowah for all of those years took verbal communications that he had through his prophets, and the verbal communication in the moment is much more powerful because of inflection and tone and emphasis that you can convey through the spoken word. And he said, I want you to write it down as I'm speaking it to you. And you're losing a huge amount of what God conveyed the moment you write it down. But the difference is, if it was just left as the spoken word 5 minutes after you heard what God said and he went on to the next subject, you would have about a 0% possibility of being able to write it down all correctly and convey it, or convey it mouth to ear to another generation. So the only way to make this work was to have written communication, and that's why I started with Yahowah. I examined his written communication using the oldest manuscripts, and I wrote about it in written books. So there was a written record of these things. But something changed with the advent of Facebook and YouTube, and then eventually X, where spoken words now have legs. Spoken words have all of the durability, if you will, of the written word. Mm-hmm. Boy, if you've spoken it on the internet, it's there to stay. It's there to stay. So it has the same longevity and credibility. So now if you were in a court, if you've spoken it online at all, you've spoken it all, because now the spoken word is more complete, more powerful, than is the written word because of the inflection and the eye contact and the gestures and the tone and all of those sorts of things. There's no interpreting the spoken word like you have to interpret the written word. And it's so much more expressive. And now it has longevity. So, we're creating these vlogs. I think we've done some 700 of them already since, Yahowah says, I want you to become a vlogger, and we bought the equipment to vlog. I think we've done some 700 of them. So we've been active in producing these. And it is a vastly better way to communicate, because I think you're much more credible when you do a live stream like we're doing. And you've got the camera there, and you've got us communicating with one another where you're completely vulnerable. Somebody can see who you are. They can hear the tone of your voice. They can know if you're stuttering all over yourself, whether or not you have to have multiple takes or breaks in between. We just turn on the lights and go. Here it is. You better know the material.
And the wife can walk in the room.
Yeah, and so it's a much more effective way. And what God realized is that not only had he foretold this was going to happen, and would the mechanism be available at the right time for us to do this, but it would be a much more compelling way to communicate with his people and a better way to keep things current.
Mm-hmm.
Now we don't have to go back and re-edit all those books. We learn something and we just go forward. Share it, build upon it. And what this has done is it's enabled the pace of what we're learning to expand exponentially. I am certain that we have learned 10 times more in this past year than we did in the 23 years that preceded it.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah. In fact, I've had several people now say, it's hard to keep up because they took a break from what we were doing. Life got in the way. They took a break, and they've come back in after an intermission, and you go, my God, where are we? It's just so much that has been discovered. It's a lot to recognize that there was no Jesus, because Dowd is the Son of God and the Messiah who fulfilled Pesach through crucifixion. And that's a lot. And then, just here recently, we learned that tree of knowledge in the garden and the tree of lives happens to be Dowd and Yada, and one points to the other. And if it wasn't for the tree of knowledge now, no one would know about the tree of lives and what Dowd did to open the door to life through Passover. And then this brings us right back to, the greater and lesser luminary and the previous chapter 1 of Bereshith Genesis, and understanding how they work together as signs for the Moedim, restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony. And in case you didn't get it, both in the 89th Mizmor, and I believe it's the 104th, God expressly says that the sun and the moon, that Dowd is essentially the sun, and that the moon never leaves his side. The moon is always there to support him. And that in the 104th, it's the moon fulfilling Moed Mikre, and that the sun recognizes that Yada is the moon, and that they're going to work together to make all of this happen. He reinforces and explains his story. And that then puts us where we are now, which is a extraordinary acceleration of this knowledge, and just in time. We have now Leah here for Family Hour. We have also that
baby Kara.
Vera Kara. So we have Leah.
And Wookie has already stolen her toy twice.
Okay, well they don't play nice all the time. Well, they play as dogs, and therefore they steal each other's toys. So right. It has been a rapid acceleration of what we've come to know, and I think this is why Yahowah said, okay, the library is more than sufficient. Anybody can read any one of these books, and they're going to know who Yahowah is, what he's offering, what he's expecting in return.
That, if I may, that was also prophesied. I don't remember the Towrah address, but these are what Yahweh was calling the latter rains. Before a harvest, late rains make your crops yield extra fruit.
Right.
And that is what's happening. Since we ditched the hangers on and the branch that was broken away, we have exponentially learned.
Oh, of
it
course.
has been raining down on you.
Yeah, and
Quite frankly, and the insights have been extraordinary.
yeah, and part of that too is that being the tree of knowledge, and we've learned that the Towrah is not a messianic symbol at all. We've known it wasn't messianic, but the world's still lost in that myth. But the Towrah is the tree of knowledge, and God makes it explicit. There is overwhelming the evidence that God has provided that the Towrah is the tree of knowledge. And it says that true tree is parah, saying that the true tree is fruitful. I have planted a lot of seeds in my day.
Oh, you have?
And I planted a lot of saplings in my day. I have never had a seed produce fruit in its first year or second year or third year.
No.
I've never planted a sapling that was 3 or 4 years old that was any good at delivering useful fruit within a year or two. Fruit trees take a while to mature. In fact, you've got to really do a lot of cultivating, a lot of protecting and nurturing and husbandry with fruit trees before they are productive. And that's the nature of the tree of knowledge. Its fruit is very effective today, but it took in our case, it took 24 years for that tree to become as productive as the tree is now, as fruitful as the tree is. It began to deliver fruit fairly soon after it was put in place by Yahowah, reestablished by Yahowah. But the fruit has become much more prolific as a result of God cultivating this and us taking the time to allow the tree to develop. And, that's where we are. I say we're learning at a prodigious pace.
Indeed.
Almost every day someone will come into my office and I'll be working on a translation. Usually now we're really directed by Yahowah to where he wants us to go. Somebody will say something that is demeaning or critical or slanderous, and God says, yeah, I knew they were going to say that. Go there and you'll find the answer you're looking for. And so we're doing a lot of that, and the answers are so exciting that fast as you share them, you discover them, you want to share them. Hey. So it is pretty extraordinary in that regard. We have Cara, I think now is biting Rich, either that or the cables or something of that nature. And so, we have an unruly family sometimes. So quite frankly, we are growing exponentially, and along with the new team that we have in place, it has been this ideal environment for us to share it. The development of the Yahowah vlog has been the perfect embodiment of that, and particularly here over the last 6 months, we grew almost within months to the maximum number of followers you can have on Facebook. We have grown exponentially, and we have many, many YouTube sites. We're on Rumble, and we're on Instagram and TikTok and so many other places. And the only one I would say that remains a challenge, and we are still probably 100 times more popular there than we were previously, would be X. And it's mainly because on X, everything is run through Grok, and Grok does not like anyone that says anything that's outside of what's popular. And our message is the antithesis of popular. We're criticizing Christianity. We're criticizing Islam. We're criticizing progressive Marxists. We are criticizing the Haredim cult within Israel. We're criticizing MAGAs, and we're criticizing conspiratorialists. And collectively, those 6 groups are essentially...
Oh, you forgot the Motherites.
Are essentially X. And so, since you're... even though you prove your points, the very fact that you're in opposition to the popular appeal of X, Grok does not like that. So
no,
you're never going to succeed there in an environment that is controlled by AI.
By an algorithm.
That
this is an unpopular algorithm.
Yeah, that determines what's right or wrong based upon its popularity.
So
Craig, all in all, go ahead.
You're Dowd's Herald, but you are manifesting now as a Elia-esque type of character.
Yes, and if you look at Elia, he was not very popular. The politicians of the day hated him, condemned him, and the religious establishment was universally opposed to him. If there had been a Grok or an AI back then, I'm sure that they would have been part of the crowd saying, you're a troublesome soul, and we've taken a popularity poll, and we all think you're wrong.
Wait till they get a hold of the 8 of us in Jerusalem.
Oh, my.
They're going to love us.
Yes. And that's the way God wanted it to be. He's you can tell by everything he did. For example, when Adam and Sheowl both failed to meet his expectations, did God said, okay, there's only the 3 of us here now.
No.
So maybe we can work something out. Maybe a little compromise here. Maybe.
Hell no, he booted them both.
No, he absolutely booted them both. There was, he asked them a couple of questions. They lied to him. They shirked responsibility. They showed that exactly who they were and said, well, then.
Apathetic, pathetic, delusional, confused, just like most people today.
Yeah. It is what we experience. So we re-engage in the story where we left off last time. We find that, it's a subtle thing, but there, in the initial introduction to Kara, we find it in this next statement. And Kara, you guys know, is the basis of Mikra. Those are the 7 annual invitations to be called out of this world, or to be even called out of the protective nature of the garden, so that we can meet with and engage with God, read and recite his testimony, and be welcomed into his company. And so in this discussion of Yahowah and life around them, we find Kara. In fact, I think we find it twice in this next statement. And it says that Adam summoned and met with, greeting by name, all of the animals, birds of the sky, and every conscious life form of the expansive environment. But there was not found for the man, Adam, a helper similar to and right for him. So, after God said, Adam's interaction with the animals was not, I guess, very exciting for God. So, the best he could do is name them, but evidently didn't engage with them, found nothing there in all of those animals that was even could be suitable as a companion, somebody that he could work with.
He's also suggesting here someone that's similar, like unto Adam.
Yes.
And of all the animals, dogs are very sweet. Each animal has its beautiful and awful characteristics, exactly like people. But a helpmate, someone that is going to assist and work with, not even a dog does that very well.
Yeah, but what I think that Yahowah wanted Adam to deduce is that the difference between Adam and God was sort of like the difference between Adam and, let's say, a dog.
Yes.
And but I don't think Adam came to that conclusion to say that, if I work with the dog, perhaps that dog could become really good company. I help this dog be more than it currently is. And if Adam had made that connection, he says, oh, maybe that's what God is suggesting for me, that if I work with him and listen to him, that I might become more interesting, that I might become more capable, and therefore a good companion. Just like a trained dog, a dog that you have nurtured and loved and taken care of, becomes a interesting companion for us.
Isn't it interesting now that we're teaching dogs to talk, but we're still ignorant of God?
Yes, that's true. And I do think at that moment, that Adam had the capacity to communicate with these animals. Something that we have lost the ability to do over time. And so God brought all of the animals, and this is Kara, summoned and met with Kara by name. And therefore, he was able to meet with them in a way that he could communicate with birds, which also is an interesting revelation, because it means that what God was trying to share was life. Mm-hmm. God found life the most interesting thing that he had created, and he wanted to share life. So he wanted to share his creation, if you will, with the man, and the man just wasn't digging it. There was nothing there that was workable for the man of all the things that God created. And, it's the opposite of what I think God was looking for. I think he was looking for, man, these animals are spectacular.
I think he was looking for people who like to binge watch Nat Geo.
Yeah.
Like me.
Yeah. So, other animals were good, of course, but they were not particularly helpful or supportive. And they were not perhaps sufficiently similar to man's. Therefore, this is why God said he created woman to be right for him, serving as a counterpart. And we are most effective and productive when we work together. But that takes us also back to the reason that God introduced man to the animals, to find someone to keep company with man.
To learn to value life.
Is that, what was backing away? When he said it's not good for man to be alone, and then he introduced the animals, the only way that God would say it's not good for man to be alone is if God had made the decision at that point. I
digress. I think that Adam and Sheowl had already left the garden mentally, psychologically.
No, it can't be true. Sheowl didn't exist at this point. Oh. So God is saying that he intends to separate from man. That's the only reason he would say it's not good for man to be alone. Otherwise, man wouldn't have been alone, would he? No. God was announcing.
That is such a key point to realize that when he said that I am, it's not good for man to be alone. It's been there all this time, and it can't mean anything else, logically speaking.
And no one has ever made that deduction previously.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the answer we have to face to resolve that problem. God was bored with Adam, and he was going to, rather than spend more time with Adam, he was going to withdraw from Adam. That's why he said it's not good for man to be alone, even though he had created man to work with him, to be in this relationship with him, to listen to him and learn from him. He said, not good for man to be alone, which means God was going to leave him. And if we want to return to God in a meaningful way, we have to not only recognize that God said that.
Yes.
We must also figure out what it was about Adam that wasn't satisfying for God. God had other things to do that were more interesting to him than talking to and interacting with man.
Well, I think at this point, apathetic Adam and speaks her mind Towrah, they didn't have anything really interesting to say.
No.
And I think that Adam's potential, we're talking about Adam, the bigger idea of Adam, is there. It's always been there. And by showing Adam creation, it's to help him understand, A, value life, B, We want to have a working relationship, because man cannot exist without a working relationship with the animals around. We don't grow crops until modern machinery. We couldn't do any of that.
Well, it was essential that man develop a relationship that was productive with the animals in and outside of the garden. Otherwise, he has no way to engage and to cultivate and improve life in the garden. And he didn't do that.
No.
All he did is name them.
And he certainly failed Chowah
Yeah. Now, well, there was no Chowah at this point. So
later.
the other part of it that's, I think, quite interesting is not only that God chose to give up on man, he's going to separate from man. He made the statement, it's not good for man to be alone, which means that it isn't good for us to be separated from God. And at this point, that's what man had in terms of relationships with God. And God is announcing, it's not good for you to be separated from me. What have the Jewish people done? You know, God chose them and they separated themselves from him right at the outset. So God is announcing, that's not good for you. You know, look at the history of Israel and how horrible it has been and the suffering they have endured.
Tragic.
And so God is saying, real simple, right here, right at the beginning, this is not good for you to be alone. And I'm here for you, but you've chosen to be alone because you've chosen not to engage with me. You've a relationship where both parties aren't contributing to it.
Well, Israel's chosen to engage with every party except Yahowah.
And they don't listen to
That's her
Yahowah.
problem.
They listen to everybody but Yahowah.
Yes.
Hence the term shub.
Yeah, sure.
She is a
Necessity
whore
of
with
truth.
many, many lovers.
Yeah, so God's saying, I'm not going to return to you until you return to me. So returning to God is important because it's not good for man to be alone. So now this note, the verb that Yahowah selected to present the conception and arrival of woman from man is surprising. It is Nephal. And you know what Nephal means?
Fall.
It means to fall.
To fall.
It means to fall. And it's exceedingly
To
telling
humble oneself, to be
Right.
meek.
when you concede, well, it just means to fall. When you consider what were the people called outside of the garden when Yahowah said, I regret that I have created man, and he decided that he would eliminate those outside of the garden with
Nephilim.
a nasama. What were those people called?
Nephilim.
Nephilim, which is the
Nephilim.
plural of what?
Nephal.
Nephal.
The
And so
fall.
the very people that God eliminated were the fallen, weren't they? When God sent the spies, two people from, somebody from every one of the 12 tribes into the promised land. And 10 of the 12 came back and they said, we're humbled by what we saw. We're scared by what we saw. What did
there were Nephilim in the land.
What did they imagine seeing?
They said there were Nephilim in the
They
land.
said there were Nephilim in the land.
Nephilim.
Could there have been Nephilim in the land?
No.
No, because the Nephilim were eliminated with the flood. So they acknowledged their own fallen state by imagining the Nephilim.
By projecting.
So, and all of those who did imagine back that they were frightened of the Nephilim, which were imaginary, God says, you're good as dead. You're not going to go into the promised land and you're all walking corpses. So this is a really loaded term. It is a term that's used throughout the Torah and prophets, and it means to fall. That's all it means, is to fall. And it means to go, by fall, it means to go from a higher position to a lower one. Now, it can convey becoming inferior through failure and neglect also. And particularly insightful in this regard, the victims of the flood, as we have just acknowledged, Leah said, were Nephilim, which is a derivative of this verb. It is the plural of this verb. So it is not an auspicious occasion for man or for God. What we have perceived as beneficial would lead to the very fall of man, to his degradation while he slept. And upon further investigation, man's decline was the result of Adam being somewhat Tardema, listless, apathetic, showing signs of lethargy. He appears to have shirked some of the work, if not all of it, that God intended. He failed to be diligent. And isn't this the story of man ever since?
It is the laissez-faire intellectualism that permeates society today.
Yeah. What is the reason that nations like America have huge debt and are so unproductive? These people have become dependent, haven't they?
Nobody wants to work.
They feel like they have entitlements. You know, everybody was screaming that there's 40, 50 million recipients of food stamps that weren't getting their food stamps. Well, what were they doing to contribute to society such that society should give them food stamps? Well, what is it? What makes somebody entitled? Being dependent? Being dependent doesn't contribute anything. And if you reward failure and you punish success, you're not going to have much success, and you're going to have a lot of failure. And this was the conditions that we were witnessing. So this next line is riveting, and I am certain we're the first to discuss it and to point out what actually happened. And Yahweh Almighty, he caused the fall of man for being somewhat comatose due to a lack of work and diligence.
Apathetic Adam.
Tardema, to the point of lethargy and apathy, from randam, from being asleep and somewhat unconscious.
Asleep at the wheel, just like most people right now.
No, said this before.
So it's
The 99.99%.
There it is, right there.
That is the 99.99% right there.
Okay.
Comatose.
But it's right there. It's obvious. You know, it is cause the fall. Now, fall means to fall.
Yeah.
The subject of the verb is Yahweh. The object of the verb is
Adam.
Man, Adam. So if the subject is Yahweh and the object is man and the action of the verb is to fall. And by the way, the Hiphil stem. What is the Hiphil stem? The subject causing the object to engage in the action of the verb.
Right. Good.
The subject causes the object to engage in the action of the verb. The action of the verb is to fall. The imperfect, what does that mean?
It's ongoing.
Ongoing. He caused him to fall, and he would stay fallen for a very, very long time.
And we are still dancing that dance.
So here's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Subject of the verb is Yahweh. Object of the verb is man. The action of the verb is to fall. And the stem of the verb says that the subject causes this fall to occur relative to the object. How can you interpret that any other way if you're paying attention to the words? Then Yahweh Almighty, he caused the fall of man.
You can. And I think, Craig, it's really worth noting and making it absolutely unequivocal that it was not, was not Chawa that caused the fall of man. It was Yah himself, for the reasons you just elaborated.
They want to put him anymore. What's wrong with you?
Yes, and once you recognize that it was Yahweh that caused the fall of man, now it is incumbent upon us to figure out why. And then once we figure out why Yahweh caused the fall of man, to ascertain what we can do to rise, to get back up.
Stop being apathetic and a crappy listener.
Right. Well, the first clue would be the word that follows, Tardema. Stop being lethargic. And so when we're told that Yahowah, the first thing that Yahowah told us about his intent with man is that he would work in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
And lethargy is the antithesis of diligent work, is it not?
Absolutely.
And so there's a clue.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first things we can do is engage and be productive with God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Yahowah will turn you into a workaholic.
Yeah, well, we are workaholics. That is for true, isn't it, Rich?
Yep. Always have been, even before I got here. So
Yeah,
It's an INTP thing.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And she did.
yeah.
Yeah.
He slept inert and inactive. Yeshin. He was unmotivated and sedentary. There's your second clue.
Mm-hmm.
Call imperfect, third person masculine singular. Speaking of Adam, he was inert and inactive. He was unmotivated and sedentary.
Most people sit around watching TV today, don't they?
Yeah.
Or
So-
YouTube.
So wait till you hear what's next if you study the root of the words. So he grasped hold, this is Yahowah, so he selected and took, called imperfect, third person masculine singular. One of, now we always just translate this as ribs. It's Tesla.
Mhm.
But you know what the actual meaning of Tesla is?
Just
It means to be lame. It
Oh.
speaks of lameness. It's to be limp and lame. Rather than being upright and walking with God and having a backbone and showing some, character,
Maybe it's the other half of that floating rib.
he was lame. He was listless.
Mhm.
That's. Would you have thought that Tesla, which every time it's rendered is rib, but if you look up the actual meaning of Tesla,
Lame.
it's not actually rib.
Is that the
Lame.
primary initial first?
Meaning of the word, yeah.
Yeah,
Lame.
lame.
If you're going to say you're lame, you'd use the word Tesla.
It's from the verbal root to be limp and lame.
Lay a noodle.
It's God's laying it all out here. It's just, how did we all miss it when it's this
He is
obvious?
calling Adam a loser.
Yeah,
The
a wet
lazy
noodle.
So
Loser, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Is
Oh,
the
he's
loser
calling
word.
Adam. Yeah, he's
issue
calling
of a
Adam.
rib?
Lazy and apathetic with a bad attitude and can't listen or
So-
follow directions. That's a loser.
where do we get the concept of a rib from?
Because in the context, if you misrepresent all of these words, you go to a rib because that's really the part of the anatomy that you're going to come to if you're misrepresenting all of the words.
You dug your own grave. Yeah. That's where you
What
are.
do you think there, Jeff?
As a chest physician, I am actually speechless right now.
Yeah, this is what you do. This is in your wheelhouse, isn't it?
Yeah.
That Yahowah caused the fall of man because man was listless, he was lame, he was inert, he was inactive. Then it says he sutured up, and cigar, well, we render it sutured, and you can get there. Its primary meaning is actually to isolate. So he closed by shutting and separating the place beneath and succeeding it, under it and instead of it. So he removed that which was listless. And then he came up with this idea that I'm going to make a succession of things such that ultimately it's not going to be lame and listless. I'm replacing, isolating the listlessness and separating it and coming up with a succession with a Bashar.
There it is.
Yep.
So apathetic Adam, who's limp and asleep at the wheel,
Mhm.
like 99.9999% of
Mhm.
people today,
Mhm.
will be replaced with a Bashar.
Bashar.
Oh.
And of course, Bashar is just simply translated flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the primary meaning of Bashar.
No, it's not.
The verbal root of Bashar is to be a herald.
Mm-hmm.
It's to be a human who is not afraid to speak out.
Because he's a Gibor.
So,
Are you telling me that you're the antidote for inertness and listlessness now?
Yes.
I am not the antidote, but you're very close. It's very astute what you just came up with. Dowd is the antidote.
Yes. Dowd.
I'm the one who announces him.
Yes.
As the Bashar, I'm the herald of the antidote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's what God is saying here. Through the progression of events, there would be a herald who would acknowledge the antidote. The antidote, the guy who engaged,
It's Dowd.
the guy who was bold, and the guy who was really smart, the guy who listened to God
Mhm.
and communicated what he had learned from God, the guy who was constantly learning and constantly acting, engaged, bold, courageous, the guy who fell down and tripped over his own feet and tongue countless times, but always got up. And the guy, when it really mattered, fulfilling Pesach and Matzah, when he had to be counted on to do the right thing, the guy that did it, he did it.
So,
And so the Bashar is the one who announces
Everything that Dowd said.
the antidote, and the antidote is
Dowd.
Dowd.
Mm.
so Dowd is the antithesis of Adam,
Correct.
and
Right.
and essentially
Yeah.
secondarily removed is
Right. That is correct.
Bashar. There you go.
Okay, so
Correct.
Dr. Jeff, in your world, basically, he's the pharmacist and the filler for the prescription.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So isn't that spectacular?
Yeah.
Now we understand that God caused the fall of man because man was listless, and he came up with a solution that was going to be announced by a Bashar.
This makes
And
me
we
want to
are-
be this makes me want to be a tree hugger.
Yeah, there we go.
We're all a bunch of tree huggers
Yeah.
here. A bunch of hippies. Yep.
I can't recall, and I think this is what you guys, your reaction is as well. All of us ever reading anything from Yahowah this surprising, having Yahowah plainly state that he caused the fall of man, explaining why he caused it, and then explaining how he was going to, in the ordinary succession of events, solve that the listless problem of man through a Bashar.
So right now, this is a podcast on the Ma of Mikra.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
There we go.
Yeah, understanding the pondering the implications of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was written in a way so that if you weren't paying attention to the words, if you weren't
No, if you were
exceedingly-
reading man's version of it,
Right.
you're done.
yeah, so if you're reading a translation of it, they all went in the same direction, superficial. They all wanted to present that Chowrah, which they renamed as Eve, was the cause of the fall. And they didn't want to recognize that God created the fall. And he created the fall because Adam was listless. He wasn't engaged. He wasn't listening. He wasn't active. He wasn't contributing to the relationship. And that this would be the announcement of a Bashar to explain precisely what was happening here.
And if I may, I think this is why Adam's being listless and apathetic and lame, that he's not teaching his woman anything. And that's why Yahowah feels sorry for
Yeah.
women today.
But of course, there wasn't a woman at this point. There would be, but there still wasn't. So now what we have is the realization that Yahowah introduced Adam, man, for the purpose of working. And I would like to ask you, gentlemen, since that was the prime objective, first thing that God mentioned
Yeah, it didn't
relative
work.
to Adam was he wanted him to make a contribution to the garden, make it better. Can you list for me the ways that the story explains that Adam made a contribution, please?
Never
You can
even,
begin. Why don't you begin, Kirk?
okay, yeah, I don't. My problem is no. The answer is no, nothing. But,
Nothing.
got all those
I can tell you.
dogs, and you don't want to play with the dogs. You don't want to ride the horse. You don't want to. You
No.
want to
Yeah.
pick some
Right.
fruit. Hey,
Right.
what's
Yeah.
wrong? You know.
Yeah. Make some jam out of the fruit. Make a fruit salad. Groom the milk the goat. Shear the sheep and make some fancy clothes or something. Do something.
I can tell you what Adam
Train
contributed.
the dog.
Yeah.
I can tell you what Adam contributed. He was busy gorging on the tree, the fruit of the tree. That's what he was doing.
Yeah, or scramble some eggs. Figure chicken lays eggs. That's pretty clever. Those things are really edible. If I put them over a fire, this is really good. We can do some really good stuff here. Nothing.
So he was a lump, not even on a log.
He was a lump, but not on a log. And so it. Here we go. We have an explanation. So, while the word is not mentioned here, its inference lingers. Our nephesh soul is our consciousness, and it depicts a living organism's ability to observe and respond to stimuli in the surrounding environment. It's the evidence of life, and it is what was being anesthetized. And what we have here was that Asher. She is moving the table tremendously, which is now I'm looking at my notes and there we are. We're a little more straight now. Thank you. But what we have here is that Adam wasn't paying attention. He was given a nephesh soul to observe and respond to the environment. He was doing nothing. He was just napping. And then he was given a nasama to think these things through, to make an intelligent conclusion, and he wasn't able to do that either. So man should have been aware, should have been responsive, but instead he became apathetic. So I think the implications are profound because this astutely depicts the nature of humanity throughout the ages. I look around now and I read posts on X and Facebook, and you just shake your head and say, God, the overwhelming preponderance of people are just really stupid. Particularly the religious and the political. I mean, they're just really dumb. I mean, occasionally, maybe one out of every 50 posts you read and say, well, that's astute. That person is worth listening to. That person is worth engaging in conversation. But for the most part, social media is the place where stupid prevails. It's just preponderance of people remain appreciably degraded, tragically unaware, lacking initiative due to the neglect of our nasama. Think about how stupid you have to be to promoting the bleeding and tortured, thorn-wearing Jesus nailed to a death stake and say, this is our God.
Ew.
He's saving you.
Ew.
And you say, wait a minute. Your God is a man?
Or how dumb
What?
you have to be a Catholic.
You want to say, you're telling me that your God is so inept that men can kill him? You're telling me you think that you're celebrating your God by showing him being tortured, and you can't get past him being tortured. And you think that's a good thing? Let's suppose your God was real. Do you think he's going to be thrilled with you for constantly picturing him being tortured? It's just so absurd. You just say, how could people be that dumb? How could people be so dumb to think that God wants you to annihilate humans and that the reward for killing a bunch of people is virgins in paradise? I mean, you look at these rabbis and the videos they produce of them celebrating their religion, and you say, wow.
Stupid.
It's just stupid.
For most of what you're describing, Craig, is to call them dumb, ignorant, and stupid would be an upgrade. That would be actually a compliment.
Yeah, because they're zombies. They're the walking
Asleep at the wheel.
The walking dead.
The comatose, apathetic Adam.
So we lack initiative. We have neglected our Nasama conscience. Nobody is thinking. Well, very few are. Now, this is the reason that religion and politics have prevailed in controlling the masses. The people are easy to fool because they don't think. And it is why it's now or never for the restoration of the tree of knowledge, because we're getting to the point that there aren't a lot of people that can read, capitalize on it, to benefit from it. And we've reached a point in time where the majority have lost either the will or ability to think.
People have lost the desire to read as well.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're doing social media.
Yeah.
So beyond this realization that most humans are neither worth saving nor capable of being redeemed, and that's the case. We're no better than was Adam. With the inclusion of the Hiphil stem and the imperfect conjugation, modifying man's in the fall descent, Yahweh was admitting that he had a hand. He was the operative force in this result. He must have seen or experienced something in Adam that caused him to realize that as an animal within a protective environment, he would never have developed the initiative or with the wherewithal to grow, to be anything more than a pet. Just a better version of the other life forms.
Kind of like the effeminate rabbi of today.
He would need to stub his toes, so to speak, to develop character, from overcoming challenges, learning by necessity, even dying to appreciate the value of life. And in that protective garden, it was never going to happen. That's why God said it's not good for man to be alone, because he was going to be alone.
A long time.
Why he caused the fall.
A long time.
It was necessary for man to fall, for man to be able to get up and prove that he could be valuable, that he could contribute to a relationship with God. So the realization that God caused the fall of man by his own admission not only upends all we have been told to believe, it also prompts some initiative in us. I think it should.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we are to appreciate why this would be so, we need to take the initiative to figure out why it was so and then resolve that problem. And I think the answer is evident in this narrative. Yahweh was bored. Adam offered nothing of value or interest. He had no life experiences, no comparative way to even value the gift of life. He had learned very little and had achieved nothing. He was just a character that was easily tempted by Yahowah. He showed no resistance, said nothing, just followed along.
Went along to get along.
As a pet in a gilded cage, Adam was insufficiently interesting to be entertaining. It's as if we are looking at a goldfish swimming around in a bowl, somehow expecting something to change, like, well, circling the opposite direction or trying to jump out. After a few days, weeks or months and years of nothing but an occasional bubble, bloop, bloop,
boring.
It got old for God. And there was nothing in that bowl that was going to lead to another or a better result.
Triple L.
Is,
lame.
Pardon?
Like a triple L. Lame, lemming.
Yes. Yep. The fact that coddled animals are completely dependent on the one caring for them makes them a burden. They do not exercise their muscles or their brains. They accomplish and contribute nothing of value. They have been countless studies, and you know this, Jeff, from medical practice, that prove these conclusions, and copious examples played out among those spoiled by their parents and society. We must overcome challenges. We must work. We must learn to develop character to progress and to contribute. You know, what happens if you take a bunch of mice and you put them in an environment where everything is comfy, the temperature is perfect, they have more food than they could possibly want, they have no predators, they have no challenges of any kind, plenty of water, plenty of food, ideal conditions.
They become weak and they're eaten by the strong.
They do not only become weak, they gorge themselves to death. They die.
You know, Craig, to elaborate on the analogy that you're giving and the example is in the wild, you take a lion, a tiger, a leopard, a cheetah. If they have, you know, offspring and one of them is injured or impaired, a decision is made naturally, and at times that parent will actually kill their offspring for the sake of the others.
Yeah, it's tough decisions
all the time, you know, in nature.
Right.
Human beings used to do it before the fall of Rome, actually.
What happens with a lazy lion?
It dies.
It starves.
The hyenas will just
pick it off.
Now, by the opposite situation, there have been lots of tests where they've had mice in an enclosure, and they have changed the temperature to uncomfortably hot and then uncomfortably cold, where food is only available if they solve challenges, and they have added predators so that the mice have to figure out a way to survive the predators. And what happens with those mice over time that are in that challenging environment?
They grow.
They grow. They thrive.
They grow and
they thrive. They prevail. Animals, and we're an animal. We have to flex our muscles. We have to think. We have to have a survival mode. We have to figure out a way to work to contribute to make our situation better. And if everything is given to us and we don't work, you know, I live on an island where the overwhelming preponderance of people are on government support. And the government support is so lavish on this island that most people don't work. And they'll openly tell you that there's no reason for them to work. And many of them are grossly overweight, and they do nothing with their lives, literally nothing. And what you see is that somebody who is a dependent, they don't grow. They don't offer anything.
We have the highest crime rates per capita.
Right. You could no more engage in a conversation that would be meaningful or have a meaningful life experience with them, the man, the moon. They have literally no skills.
No, the workforce is highly incompetent.
You can't hire them. You can't put them to work. You can't give them a job. You can't communicate with them. They've made themselves complete and total dependents.
Useless.
So we have to overcome challenges, develop character, and learn a way to contribute. It's also obvious that the encounter with the other animals did not go well. God was not impressed. And so he created the woman to conceive something, well, that could be far more interesting. Men who would have to think and work to survive, a life form that would have to develop a backbone and learn to stand on his own by having fallen, only to get back up and try again. This would only be possible if there was a way to reproduce life and someone to overcome challenges with and to think through these things outside of the garden. Truthfully, Sheowl was not created for Adam in the garden. She was created for Adam outside of the garden.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Because they could reproduce and they could work together with different skill sets to raise a family.
Yes, they didn't have babies until out of the garden.
Yep. So sure, most men would be bad. Most would fall and remain that way. That's why the Nephilim persisted outside the garden, and God regretted having created man. But eventually, some men and some women would be worth the effort. It would just take a long time. So 6,000 years. Go ahead.
Craig, just to double back on what was said a moment ago, the term Hormetic, Hormetic, is a wonderful creation by Yah in our bodies physiologically. It's a stressor. And on a very basic level, our physiology is such that when you jump into hot water, jump into cold water, exercise, make yourself uncomfortable, you will strengthen your mitochondria. And for those of us who can remember back to microbiology, it's the energy powerhouse of the cell. And you will strengthen your body. You will attenuate, overcome illnesses. But on a very basic level, we were designed for that Hormetic.
For stress.
Yes.
For stress. And muscles, if you're going to function as a person, you have to have muscles. If your muscles all atrophy, you won't survive, correct? How do we strengthen a muscle? We have to work them and tear them, don't we?
Yeah. You're very intuitive and smart in what you're saying, in that the most grim prognosis for someone, regardless of their age, is when they lose lean muscle and strength. Things such as a grip, when that begins to go, that really is it heralds a very poor prognosis.
Yes. Another great example would be that you would expect, and it's very often true, that as a person ages, their ability to think slows. But I'm here to tell you that if you exercise your mind every day, that your capacity to think and to process information actually accelerates. So you can form conclusions and process information better and faster and more effectively when you grow older. If you've developed a more comprehensive base of knowledge, if your understanding of things has progressed, if you're using it every day. So minds function by being used, and if they're not used, then it's not so good.
And it's augmented by experience.
Correct. It is augmented by experience, and confidence plays a big role in this. But I would say that the reason that our understanding of things and our ability to process things like this and see it in a way that is obviously true, irrefutable, but that no one has ever perceived in the 6,000 years since these events took place, is the very fact that we have built a foundation of knowledge that is buttressed with understanding. And the more you know and understand, the better you're positioned to form even more accurate and complete and new conclusions and develop new insights. This is the whole process of learning that God was trying to achieve, but could not achieve with Adam. We are now living examples of what is specifically he's trying to achieve. This is exciting for God. This is the kind of stuff she says, yeah, this is the Bashar. This is what I have been trying to develop all of this time. And it's what God has wanted to achieve.
It is. One of the worst aphorisms, I think, ever created by man is the saying that ignorance is bliss. No, ignorance is deadly.
It's deadly. Well, actually, Yahowah said, my people are destroyed because they're ignorant.
Yeah.
It's in Hosea.
It's Hosea 4:6. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So 6,000 years later, there might even be 6,000 people who have developed a some value with God by being interesting, learning. But even if we were only 6, that would still be much better than 1, correct? In fact, in the garden, there were none. So if we are 6 now, that would be better than none. And if there are 60, that's better than 6. And if there's 600, that's better than 60. And 6,000 would be better still. But you see, God doesn't have to have a lot of people to be satisfied so long as there's a number of people that are interesting, that are dependable, that have some character, that have some resilience, that are wanting to make a contribution. And it's obvious God didn't want a pet. Now, it should also be obvious that God didn't want somebody worshiping him, because you can worship a being and be really stupid, right? So he wasn't looking to be worshiped, and he wasn't looking for a pet. He was looking for an explorer, a companion, somebody that he could have an intellectual discussion with, somebody who, it's like with Dowd. The reason we know Dowd is the antidote, the one person that God says that he listened to and responded to was Dowd. So Dowd was intellectually challenging. Dowd was
Chokmah?
Yeah, was willing to work at it and made contributions such that God said, yeah, I'm listening to him. Yeah, this is what God wanted all along. That's why he chose Dowd. So God wanted an explorer, a companion, someone who would be capable of challenging him, of questioning him, of negotiating with him, of contributing to the relationship with him, of having overcome challenges by learning and growing. In other words, rather than somebody that's humble and meek and that big God up there.
Yeah.
Exactly the opposite.
The opposite.
So confident in their relationship with God, they would challenge God.
So confident in their relationship with God, they would wear an ephod and dance in front of him with nothing else on.
Yes, exactly.
There you go. It harkens back to the concept in all of man's religions about the ridiculousness of raising. Let's raise God up in prayer. Let's elevate him.
Like a man can do that.
As if.
I mean, I guess you can if your God's no bigger than a man.
That is right.
But you can't do that if your God's a God.
Yeah. Worship and praise.
Oh my. And be humble. A listless person is plenty humble. That's not the answer. Therefore, God caused the fall of man so that one day men would rise, wiser, better equipped for the ordeal that lays ahead. And perhaps this prepares us to better understand the nature of the Etz tree. Remember, it wasn't all that long ago that we discovered that it is through etzeb, hard work, and a struggle that is particularly difficult and challenging, requiring considerable effort, even as the process can be mentally anguishing at times, that the etz becomes para, productive. You see, etzeb is a verbal root of etz, and it defines how the tree solves this. Hard work, struggle, overcoming challenges. That's actually the definition of etz and etza.
If I may.
Yes.
Society and its culturalisms currently have inoculated people's sense of what it takes to become resilient.
Yes.
They want to coddle them, protect them, and, they want to produce weak people who are easy to control.
Of course. Yeah, the more humble and meek people are, the easier they are to control, because they're not willing to stand up against the authority.
May I ask something?
Sure.
That human experiment of lording over each other is gone awry.
Yes, Kirk.
Well, I was just considering the past few weeks, it's come up multiple times where you're being attacked, we're being attacked, all of us,
Yes.
about with such a silly argument because you don't have all the answers all the time right now. And it's like, at what point, I'll just give you a parallel, which is not
Okay.
parallel, but as an artist, you barely can make a few marks, and then you start to develop, and then you figure things out. Now, and throw that piece of paper away, and throw that piece of paper away. I sent you a bunch on that
Right.
picture, on ink drawings, and they're really kind of messy. But you had to develop up, and it's like almost like a sculpture. You pat it here, and all of a sudden it takes form. So, but you don't actually know how it's going to come out until you're playing. And the same thing I've ever done, I knew all the fundamentals. I was taught those about golf, but it takes a long time to practice, and you don't have all the answers. Why do they expect to, even intellectually, it's the same thing? Why does everybody expect that you've got it all right there, and why would God not want you to work for it?
It would put you back into this situation. If God wanted to create a person that was fully developed, then they would be just like him, and that would be boring as all get out. And that's not what he did, is it? No. And so for this particular cult that is doing this, first of all, they have to recognize that the basis of their cult is wrong.
Sure.
Their claim was that I didn't recognize enough about the maternal nature of the Ruach spirit, and actually I overemphasized it. So the very complaint they had is the opposite of what they said. And then they said that there is a spirit mom, and that they're going to speak for the spirit mom, and that's over too. Both of those concepts are wrong, and they haven't come up with a single insight that has any value. So here is a group that is wrong about everything, including their own inception and their purpose. And yet they would be critical of somebody who has come up with 10,000 profound insights that no one has perceived previously, and is sharing new insights at a prodigious pace. Wouldn't that make them just complete and utter useless hypocrites?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And that's what God is opposed to. Now, I'm not complaining that they exist, because that is the whole test that God is creating, because he wants us to demonstrate that even when the attack comes from somebody who you previously had a relationship with, if you can overcome it, if you can stay the course, if you can prove that you can be relied upon, even when there is an insider attack, you're exactly what God is looking for.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Craig and Kirk and Leah and Rich, that if it's good enough for Yah to evolve from Adam to Dowd, then it's good enough to have and garner these insights and not be perfect. Moreover, to double back on what I said a few moments ago, to use that term Hormetic, thanks to the mother goddess cult, that served as a Hormetic for you to go back to Gan Eden.
For all of us, yes.
That's exactly right. So that was a stressor for you that has enabled us and helped us to grow.
What would it be from a data dump, the term you use a lot?
Yes. What's the benefit? Yeah. If God gave Adam or you or me everything he knew right from the beginning, what would be the purpose of having a relationship? Where would you go from there? How would you learn? What would you contribute? If you're given everything at the beginning, what would you be able to contribute? How would you ever demonstrate that you were thoughtful, that you were a good listener, that you wanted to learn, and that you wanted to respond if you started off with everything? And that's just the people not thinking. It's Adam was not created with everything, obviously. And Adam didn't develop anything, so therefore God says, I'm going to part company. And outside of the garden, we were given this chance to rise after having fallen, and most people didn't. But eventually, somebody did. His name was
Along
Dowd.
came a Bashar.
Yeah, and then the Bashar came along to explain that this is what happened in the garden with Adam, and why Adam was not acceptable to God, and why Dowd was. And then what Dowd achieved for us. It's really a powerful story. And imagine being God, and you say, okay, I've provided all of these clues, all this information. It's always been there. Nephil, for example, has always been there. And it's always been there that I said it's not good for a man to be alone. And all of it's there. And then all of the clues as to what I wanted from Adam that he didn't do. Always been there. How would you like to be God and say, wow, so somebody did figure it out? It was always there. I knew that man had it in him, that somebody could figure it out. And you've got to be thrilled if you're God, right?
I would say.
Yeah. And then, oh, by the way, I put all sorts of obstacles in this person's path, and they overcame them. They just stepped right around them, right over them. They used the obstacles to grow. This is, and who has worked harder? I mean, God wanted somebody to work with him. Good God, we've done 12 to 14-hour days for 24 years.
I was so tired I dropped my dinner tray tonight.
Yes, she did.
Sorry.
Yeah. Asher wasn't. She got a second dinner out. Yeah, Leah does not play the 5-second rule.
No.
So, yeah, there you go. But we're boys. Boys do. We're just different than girls. And in that regard, I've never met a guy that wouldn't play the 5-second rule.
No.
For women that don't know what that means, if it falls on the floor, if you pick it up within 5 seconds, it's still good to eat.
It's not dirty.
It's totally true. We're all that way, right? Women aren't that way.
It's disgusting. No.
Sure.
Well, my wife will have a conniption fit over a bug that is somewhere in the room next to her, and then she cringes when I go over and squish the bug with my finger so I can remove it so she can feel comfortable. She, oh my God, you touched the bug!
What's wrong with you? Yes.
It's all good now. Don't touch me with that hand.
Yeah. No.
Clay, you don't appreciate the crunch?
No. Oh God, no. No. I other than bugs and creepy crawly things and so that sort of thing. No, when it comes to that, I'm very much a girl. Otherwise, I think like a man.
Now, one of Yahowah's favorite plants is the vine. It produces grapes, correct?
Yes.
Do you know that if you plant a vineyard in perfect soil, it gets the perfect amount of rain, perfect amount of sunshine, that the grapes that come off of that vine are not sweet, have no flavor. And it's only when that vine has struggled, when, the rain, there were some dry periods in there and maybe a little period where it was a little too wet and the soil was a little rocky and it really had to work to produce. Those are the sweetest and most delectable grapes of all.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Something.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fact of the matter is that the Etz Dayath, the tree of knowledge, would have to work for and do the job. And the Etz Dayath, as the Choder, now serves not only Yahowah and mankind, but in particular one man, Dowd, the tree of lives. He represents the tree of lives. And so God now has a worker who is engaged, pointing out the value of the one man who is the antidote for Adam. And when God said, when he chose Adam, he says, I chose him. What's the first thing that God said after he chose Adam, or chose Dowd? Do you remember what it was?
No, sir.
He says, I make decisions on what I want and how I choose and value people in a manner that's totally different than the way that people make those decisions. So is he now telling you that that Dowd is the one whose aptitudes, attitudes, approach to life, accomplishments is exactly what God's looking for?
I would think, yes.
Yeah. Did Dowd ever fall?
Oh,
Down and up.
Yes.
several times.
Did Dowd ever make a mistake?
Lots
Yes.
of
Multiple.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I have more sins than hair on my head.
Yep. So God is not looking for somebody that's perfect.
No. Hardly.
God's not looking for somebody that doesn't make mistakes.
Hardly.
He's looking for somebody that overcomes them, that gets up once they fall.
Well, in the Gibor, there is confident.
Mhm.
I know lots of men who are confident.
Mm-hmm.
I know very few that are capable and competent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the two must go together.
And so Dowd was brilliant. So God obviously likes a thinking man. Dowd was articulate. So God evidently likes a talking man. Dowd, by the way, was one of the very few people that would take God on. They would say, I'm not happy with this. This is not working for me. No, this is not good. He would take God on. He would go right after him. God would never back down, by the way. And but he worked it out with Dowd because that's something he was looking for.
He wasn't the only one, but he was very successful in negotiating with Yahweh.
Absolutely. Mostly with Yahweh, he sold what he wanted to do, which is to serve as the Passover lamb. And he was very successful at convincing Yahweh that it was the right call. Of course, Yahweh knew he was going to make that call before the universe was created. But, there are just so many really interesting people in Yahweh's realm, and particularly Dowd.
I'll mention another interesting person. I wrote to him a couple decades back.
Yeah, 20 years
about how why he was so interested in our book, the Jewish book, right?
And now you know.
Yeah. Well, 100,000 hours later,
Mm-hmm.
and it's obvious that the Bashar,
Mm-hmm.
pointing to the Tree of Lives, is what's really going down here.
Yeah, it's true. It's why there's a greater and lesser luminary in the first chapter of the Towrah, and why there is a tree of lives and knowledge in the second chapter of the Towrah.
And why there are two men standing in Yahweh's name.
Yep, there you go. So, in our desire to properly process the possibilities, please ponder the interpretation of the preceding. So, Yahweh Almighty, he caused the fall of man for being somewhat comatose due to the lack of work and diligence. He slept, inert and inactive, unmotivated and sedentary. And so he grasped hold of one of his ribs, symbolic of that which was limp and lame from his side. He sutured up and isolated the place beneath, and succeeding it, even replacing it over time with the Bashar human herald. Pretty profound, isn't it? And it's an eye-opener. I mean, it's hard to even come to grips with all of that, but that is where we are, and that's why there's the tree of knowledge, and why it points to the tree of lives. It's why there is a lesser luminary pointing to the greater luminary. And it's interesting, even with those luminaries, one of the things that most people wouldn't process there is that God has 4 statements about those luminaries, and they are presented on the 4th day of creation. And neither are the sun and the moon, because God has Shemesh and Yara as the words for sun and moon. He didn't use them, and he's using Ma'or every time, luminary, and never once used the terms for sun and moon. And of course, the sun and moon had existed long before plant life was created, and it was created on the 3rd day. So he's not talking about creating the sun and the moon, not even talking about the sun and the moon.
No.
That are greater and lesser luminary, and they would be signs for the Moedim. And it's written plural. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the greater luminary, he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, Bikuwrym, and the lesser luminary is responsible for Shabuah and Towrah, which then makes them both working together to enable Bikuwrym. And those trees are back right where they belong on Sukkah, working together again. The Moedim are the greater and lesser luminary. They are these trees. So God said they're signs for the Moedim. And then he went as far as to say that both of these luminaries, the Maor, he says they're both Godowl. They're both Godowl. Both influential. They're both important. He just says that one is more important than the other. Yeah, because the one who serves as the firstborn son, the one who enables the benefits of the covenant, the one who is the exemplar of the family God's trying to achieve, the man who is the antidote for fallen man, who gets back up and rises, he's more important than the person that says, oh, that's the most important guy right there. You got to be paying attention to him. That's Dowd David, man. He's our Messiah. He's the Son of God. He is our Savior. He is our returning King. And it even says that he is the sovereign, and he's going to return to the sovereign, and it's the lesser luminary's responsibility to serve him. But then it doesn't leave the lesser luminary without responsibility, because he says in the time of the darkness, the lesser luminary, he's the leader. He's the one that's going to lead my people.
Yeah. Nobody would know without him.
That you wouldn't know. And so it's just, right there in the first chapter of the first book of the Torah, you've got it all laid out. And then you open the second book of the Torah and you've got these two trees. And that's their role. We're right back to the same exact story. And the knowledge of what is actually transpiring here is being brought to you by the tree of knowledge that finally is becoming fruitful.
Isn't that beautiful? I know.
Yeah. Amazing. And by the way, the whole story is all about what grows out of ha-Adamah, and such that it can be parah, fruitful. And what is the individual that sacrifices his life on Towrah so that Israel might live?
Adam and
Parah. Whole stories laid out right here for us. Mm-hmm. So, fact of the matter is, Adam was lethargic. He lacked the desire for diligence. It is a fact that should have become evident, because after Yahowah told us that man's purpose would be to work in the garden with him, we're never told of anything Adam actually did to improve his situation or to make life more interesting or productive. He wasn't productive. Adam was looking, or Yahowah was looking for parah, for productive. And perhaps when equating this to the Etz Dayath, I have already invested 24 years of 12-hour days developing Yada Yahowah. Oh, sure, it's been rewarding, but it's also been challenging, and we've had to overcome all manner of obstacles. Most recent is the name of this series. And overall, we've comprehended more about God, learned more about God than really everyone up to this point combined. If you look at what Dowd wrote in his Psalms, you could put everything that Dowd wrote in this one volume. In fact, the third volume of this really just focuses on Dowd's 109th Mizmor, and then you look at the Coming Home series, and we've got Dowd's Sheowl and his Mizmor. If you were to take everything that's in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, it's equivalent to about 1,200 pages, all of it. Yada Yahowah, it's 25,000 pages. Gives you a comparison. So sure, it's been rewarding, but it's clearly been challenging along the way, but we've been productive. We've not only turned to the oldest extant resources, the Dead Sea Scrolls, but we've scrubbed every word of the religiosity by removing the diacritical markings that were added thousands of years later by the Masoretes while exploring every conceivable connotation. The reason we were able to deduce this is the lesson of Hebrew is that verbs, actionable words, describe the meaning of nouns.
Mhm.
And so we're able to deduce the meaning that was intended by not relying on somebody's religiosity, but instead by looking at the actionable nature of the verbs that underlie them. And this has developed a wealth of insights, explanations, commentary, some of which we've just shared in this program. So days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years, and years decades, and we have never relented. And you guys have been exceedingly diligent. But, think of, now Rich here and Kevin and Leah. But, think about giving up everything that you had, every hobby, every toy that you had, been able to purchase and become skilled at operating. You gave it up. I gave them all up. I used to play golf too, not as well as you did, but
Oh, yeah.
I haven't touched a golf club in years and years and years. I love to fly. I don't own an airplane anymore. I loved being on the water and being able to captain a vessel and having Leah act as the first mate. It was a joy for us to go off and explore these islands. We don't have a boat anymore. We do this every day. We start before the sun rises and we end way after the sun sets, and we do it every single day. And that's the kind of diligence I think God was looking for. I want somebody that shows that they're willing to work at it. And that's what it takes. These are translations that I'm doing now in my spare time. We do this blog. That is our primary responsibility. Mm-hmm. So these translations that we're talking about and these insights here, this was in our spare time. This was between blogging.
It's a labor beyond love.
It is.
Yes, yeah.
Certainly a labor of love. And I'm duly impressed with our king. I'm duly impressed with his father. Yeah. And I'm duly disappointed by their people, but it's our job to resolve that. Yeah. And we're going to. So to think without the utter foolology of the neo-pagans at the want to make God a hermaphrodite at the mother goddess cult, it is unlikely that we would have returned to the garden in pursuit of these insights. I knew I had to return here because I knew we had done a program about a month previously on how Chahwa represented so many. We haven't even got to Chahwa yet in this story, but how Chahwa represented so many interesting things. I knew I had to return to the garden. And oh my goodness, I didn't. Did you expect that this is what we're going to discover?
No.
No.
Just like when you went into Numbers, we weren't expecting what was going to happen then.
Yeah, when God said, I want you to go into Numbers 12 to explain how you're supposed to deal with this cult when it first arose. And then in Numbers 12, we have a woman who attacks Moshe's wife just as they began by attacking my wife and claiming that they too spoke for God. Just as Miriam did, and God says, "Oh hell no, you don't." And then we had reason to understand the process of, is it possible for a prophet to be wrong? And so, where is the ultimate prophet, Moshe? Right? Where is Moshe's ultimate mistake? Numbers 11. Did you expect to find Numbers 11 where Moshe not only gives up and say, God, no one can do this job? And it's obvious you have no respect for me because you put me in a position where there was no way to prevail. How could you be that mean to me? And if you have any concern over me, you're going to kill me now. You think that's right? No, God, he's sitting there yelling at God saying, you're just being really mean to me because this is impossible. These people are impossible. And so he's the greatest of the prophets, and he was absolutely wrong. And that's where it took us. Mm-hmm. And then it took us to his people and the spies over this humility thing that the cult started to promote. And we found out that the people that were humble and that were meek were the ones that God said, you're dead. I have nothing. I want nothing to do with you. And what did that lead us to? It led us to Numbers 15 that explains the process that Yahowah would use to restore them to an opportunity, which was through a ram, a bull, and a goat. The three guys that carry forth the whole story, and how the bull would ultimately resolve inadvertence, guilt by omission in the end, so that the ram could return, and how important Numbers 15 is in explaining God's process. And then we have the alcoholic that is an anorexia and a cutter that decided that she would be so belligerent towards you, Rich, so belligerent, or excuse me, Dr. Jeff, so belligerent to my wife and belligerent to you, Rich, yep. While condemning me, and she didn't even know me. We've never met. You realize that, her whole line of attack is specifically answered here, because Dr. Jeff, what was her big complaint when the one time I talked to her on the phone was when you called me, because I don't ever know her. I would never have any reason to talk to her. The one time I talked to her on the phone was you were in a coffee shop where she came in to see you. And in that coffee shop, she wanted to play religious and say, you can't work on the Shabbat because the two guys that were out picking up sticks were stoned to death. So you're clearly wrong on working with on the Shabbat. Wasn't that her deal?
That was her major consternation at that moment.
Yes.
Was the problem with the sticks only.
Right.
We're not dealing with sticks.
So we went into Numbers 15 and to deal with that. And there are no sticks in Numbers 15, are there? No, and there's not the word for picking up either. What happened is the fellow's uprooting the trees. And the trees happen to be of knowledge and lives, and he was uprooting the trees, and God says, yeah, that's deadly. You uproot those trees, and there is no way back to life. You need to stone that guy to death. He's uprooting the trees. Yeah. And then, of course, the religiosity was the same woman had a whole assortment of Tissots, and you find out the Tissot has nothing to do with a interwoven threads that you would wear outside of a garment. That the Tissot is actually the flower of a flax, and it's supposed to be one inside the hem of a garment, so you're the only one that sees it, and it reminds you of what happened when the flax blooms, which is Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym.
She is the fruit. She represents the fruit of the Messianic and Hebrew roots movements.
Correct. Completely lost to religion, and lashing out at you, me, and Rich because of her utter frustration with her life. I'm not going to mention her name. It's not worth mentioning. But this is what we're up against. And look what we learned when we went to Yahowah's testimony and how powerful that was. And do you think that this woman could say, thank you for pointing out that I was wrong. I appreciate you taking the time to share this and to help me understand that the Hebrew roots cult that I gave up everything in my life to be part of was wrong.
No, she quadrupled down and has just been on a negative spiral.
Yeah, and so then when their next attack on us was complaining that I said you can eat anything you want, and I said no, I didn't say that. I said Yahowah says that. That's quite a difference between I said it. You're gonna quote me correctly. What I said is Yahowah says you can eat anything you want, and so they condemned me for that. I had a whole host of people that says, I'm a liar and terrible, and you ought to throw away Yahowah because Craig says you can eat anything you want. Well, what does Yahowah say in Devarim? Doesn't he say you? In fact, didn't he say it like 4 times over? You can eat anything you want.
Yep.
And didn't he say you could eat the unclean, the clean? It doesn't matter. You eat anything you want. It has no effect on you. There's only one thing you shouldn't do. What was that?
Not think about it, or he's asking you.
No, drink blood.
Drink.
Drink blood.
I want you to pour out the blood on the ground like it's water.
Yeah.
Why? Because
Contagion.
what you eat only affects your body, and your body is meaningless. The blood affects your soul, and God actually said so. The blood is is essential for the life of your soul. Why? Because the blood of the Pesach Dowd is on that doorway to life that is essential if your soul is going to live. And why? Because that mortal remnant of Yisrael is able to be purged of their religiosity because the blood shed by the Adam of Perah, who's the bloody red man from the earth. There's a reason that Yahowah tells us that the man from Edom is bloody red. He's tired and red. And why? Because the blood that is shed is the remedy for your soul. So don't screw with the blood, because it's for your soul. And don't worry about what you eat, because your body is meaningless in all of this. And yet they want to focus on the body and cover it up, and everything they turn to. They were the ones who said that, boy, this idea of being naked, that's wrong, wrong, wrong. If you're promoting nakedness, then you're wrong, immoral. And my point was, Adam and Sheowl were naked in the garden, and it was all cool with God, and they were comfortable with God when they were naked in the garden. And God's bringing us back to the garden, is he not?
Yep.
So if you're not comfortable being exposed to God, you don't belong in the garden going forward, do you?
No.
So those that are all worried about what you're wearing, they're not going to be comfortable in the garden, and God's not going to have them in the garden. They've excluded themselves in the garden by being fixated on what's over their bodies. And when we learn that, didn't it take us to the place where Dowd was, because they were also yelling at me for saying that God likes strong, confident people, the opposite of what he got with Adam, and he's not interested in timid and meek. And it took us to the ultimate place where you have a man that is naked and very comfortable and very gaborish, bold with God, in God's presence, and that was Dowd in 2 Samuel 6, where he is parading around naked, and then there's a woman, his wife, who shames him and says, nothing that you claim regarding God is true. You're a nobody. You're worthless. This doesn't belong to you. Exactly what the mother goddess called to say.
But Dowd is kabod. Dowd is kabod.
And so there we are, and we learn all of this fascinating material about Dowd's interaction with Obed-Edom, which explains the man from Edom later and Yahowah. And we talk about the repositioning of the Ark of the Covenant and how Yahowah taught him this lesson. And then Dowd recognized that if Obed-Edom is going to take responsibility for this and bring the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem and get it properly positioned on the Temple Mount and under the tent of the restoring witness, that Dowd can dance and have a good time. He can enjoy his relationship with Yahowah, and because it's being taken care of. And they, rather than saying, well, boy, what wonderful insights. Thank you for, there's like 20 powerful insights that we deduced from that. Thank you for sharing all those prophetic insights with us. No, their little minion went and said, no. It's presented also in Chronicles, and in Chronicles, they named the people that were carrying the ark, and they provided a genealogy for Obed-Edom. So we're going to ignore everything that you shared as insights, and we're going to focus on these details as if they mattered. Just unable to learn, unreceptive to insights. Gone right back to the Miriams and the Chawas and the Mechels. Bitter.
They chose what was written 400 years post 2 Sam 6.
Yeah. And here's God, over and over again, using the very text that they cite to justify their position, to expose and condemn them. I mean, we went through in a previous program that they cited 3 things from Yahowah to say that they have a spiritual mom. And all 3 says, no, you don't. Yahowah is masculine singular. And the idea that woman was made in God's image, therefore God is both male and female. No, it doesn't say that. It says that Yahowah was made in man's image. Man was made in God's image.
I told you.
And even the word for image is masculine. And it says he made them, he, masculine singular, made him, masculine singular, in his, masculine singular, image, masculine singular. And so
Craig, maybe we can get our brother Shannon to make them T-shirts and hats that say masculine singular.
Oh yeah, or a hat or something. Masculine singular.
And I can't let you go without telling us again what Dowd's retort to Michaela was about Dowd.
Oh yeah, so Michaela, she's saying that Dowd, you've disgraced yourself. You have no significance. You're meaningless. You were even meaningless and embarrassing in front of the concubines and all of the people. You do not represent any of these claims that you assert with Yahowah. And so does well now that you've mentioned the concubines and also kabod, which means significant and weighty and matter a great deal, impressive. I'm going to go now to the concubines and we'll see if they think that I'm a kabod or not. One of the great retorts of all time. And Yahowah's response, after I'm sure saying, "That's my boy. I'm proud of you, kid." Nice line. I'm impressed with that one. He said, "Oh, as for Michael, she will never be productive.
No.
Never."
Yeah. I will say that Dowd out George Carlin with that one.
Absolutely. It was Eliah before his time.
There you go.
God picked people that could think, that have a bit of wit about them, that have some grit, rather than rolling over and say, "Well, I'm sorry, you've embarrassed me. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. What can I do to make it up to you? I'm so sorry that you're not impressed with me. I feel so bad that you think that I'm a complete fraud around Yahowah. Let me prove to you that I have some merit." No, he just, boom. And Yahowah went boom right back. It's the same thing when they approached Moshe. God says, "Boom, no, you don't. You're wrong." And so there's a reason that God responds as he does, which means we need to learn from him and respond the same way. He's looking for someone like Dowd. He's looking for someone with backbone, with courage, with confidence, character, who won't roll over and play dead, who when kicked gets right back up and says, "Oh yeah, you want some of this?" We don't go out looking for a fight, but if you're going to put one in our face, we're going to respond, because that's what God does. So, it was the foolology of the neo-pagans and the God is a hermaphrodite akin to Baphomet that caused all of this. Without their stupidity, we would not have learned at the pace that we're learning. This is the very idea that God wanted. You're going to see obstacles thrown in your path that, come from places you never would have thought possible. And working together, we're going to turn those obstacles into something extraordinary. Like for the first time ever, insights like this from the garden. And, fellas, we're only a quarter of the way through. It gets better.
You're just getting warmed up.
Oh, God's just getting warmed up. That there are so many profound insights that we're going to deduce from the garden, and we're going to present them, over these shows over the next week. Not to repudiate any more the Mother Goddess cult. They're dud. I mean, it's if they have any sense at all, any shame at all, any capacity to think and to learn, they're just going to go dark and go away. And if they don't go dark and go away, then all they're doing is further condemning and embarrassing themselves. So they are a non-factor. I don't care how many times they hashtag my name and try to pretend that that their purpose in life is to copy me, trying to do what Yahowah did, to contravene the tree of knowledge without the chakma to be able to pull it off, copying my style and wearing me like a skin while condemning me. It doesn't fly anymore. It's they're toast. It's over for them, but it's not over for us, because every moment now we are learning, growing, sharing insights that no one had previously perceived. And it's only a matter of time before more and more Israelis say, you know, there isn't anything the rabbis have said intelligently about the Torah, ever. They've never had anything intelligent to say about Yahowah, nor, I mean, they take the opposite approach to this whole story in the garden that we have just done. They take the opposite approach to Miriam. They side with Miriam against Moshe. They say God was wrong. They have never been able to deduce the understanding that they were so obnoxious that Moshe said to God, I want you to kill me. And so, since the rabbis have never come up with anything that has any merit, and now they're hearing these kind of insights, you've got to be brain dead not to be an Israeli and not say, I want to learn more from that tree of knowledge. That is obviously somebody that is absolutely keyed into the mind of God.
Absolutely.
And this is the place where we need to go to learn at this time and return to Yahowah.
You're here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right here. And I heard one of the most, I don't know if it was the most ridiculous or one of the most ridiculous things I've heard in a long time, but the miscreants who call themselves the Satmar rabbinical Jews partnering with the Fakistinians, saying that God wanted the Jews and the people who practice the Jewish religion not to have any land and to be dispersed throughout, or else he would have given them the land.
Therefore, there's no Israel.
Therefore, Israel shouldn't exist. And this is why we commiserate with the Fakistinians, and this is why we support the election of that Mandami character, the socialist Muslim of New York City.
Because we want Israel taken from the Jews because God separated the Jews, therefore he doesn't want them to have Israel. That's their thinking. So, and with that being the case, then they're just like the conspiracy cultists of the Mother Goddess cult, which is you take something that you misconstrue out of context and you fail to consider it in the whole of what God said. And there are countless places where God says, I'm bringing you back to the land. Yeah. You are going to be settled in this land. This is your land. I gave it to you. I'm going to eliminate all of the foes, and I'm going to plant you firmly in this land where you are never going to have a problem ever again. And he never gave the land away. And he only shooed them out of the land because they were so obnoxious. And when they stopped being obnoxious by returning to Yahowah, acknowledging his name, acknowledging what his son has done for them, by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bikuwrym, then they're going to be able to return to the land. And that's the story that they don't get because they've taken one thing out of context that fits their agenda and ignored everything else, like a typical conspiracy wacko. So there we have it. Well, gentlemen, I've bent your ear, and we've talked about this now for 2 hours and 15 minutes. That's probably good for our family hour. Rich, thank you for making this all possible. There's Rich there. We'll look forward to having JB back from the zoo. You know, JB, don't play the part of the monkeys. They might keep you there, so you got to be careful what you do and what you say. And we'll know that Kevin is back from supporting his. We'll always support his mom and his wife, but he's on full-time support duty, and as he should be during this time of grief. But we'll get we'll get Kevin back here shortly, and we'll be a full cast again. And but I think this worked out much better actually this evening.
It's a good show.
Just having the three, because we and then Leah, as she came in, we could interact with each other in a much more effective way, talking about what are some really profound insights. These are extraordinary, as to figure out why God caused the fall of man and what we need to do. Now it's our responsibility, what we need to do to make ourselves interesting and valuable to God, so he can trust us, so he wants to spend time with us. And I don't know if there's anything, fellas, that's more profoundly important than that at this time. And what I haven't shared now, but the reason that Leah mentioned the 8 of us, that they're wait till you get the reason the 8 of it, and Sukkah being 8 days, an 8-day celebration, is that the whole purpose of the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, and who is this productive bull, and bringing the purging the people so they can go back into Eden, is that we have 1,000 years to take this mortal remnant of Yisrael and to hone them and shape them and teach them and engage with them such that they do make a contribution, so they do value work, and so that they learn, and so that they listen, and so they respond, and so that they can show that they can be relied upon and they're trustworthy. And that is the whole purpose of us going back to the garden, is now we have the opportunity to cultivate these people such that they are worthy of being let off of this planet after 1,000 years of that experience, such that they're trustworthy to be let off this planet and they can go explore the universe with us.
What a great job, huh?
What a great job. Yeah, that's our job going forward. It's a really cool job. It's a wonderful job. And I don't much think that God cares if we're successful with 10 people or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, or if by the time they procreate and create new life and we're really good at teaching and leading by example, that there's 100,000 or 1 million.
Yeah,
it's with God, he would have been happy with have had him just then, other than a goldfish in a bowl.
Off the log.
Yeah. And I guess it doesn't, that always sets a fairly low standard for us. We just have to be more interesting than was Adam, which is a pretty low bar for us to exceed. It's pretty easy to be better than Abraham too, or Yishak, or Jacob. These is a pretty low bar that was out there. Now, Dowd's a different story. When you man up and say, I'm going to fulfill Pesach and I'm going to write about the Romans crucifying me, and then I'm going to go into hell carrying everybody's guilt, and I'm volunteering to do that. That's an entirely different story. That's setting the bar really high. Yeah, really high for that one. But we don't have to be that good. We just have to recognize that's what God's looking for.
Yeah.
Is somebody that is willing to show some courage and backbone and be bold and insightful and interesting and stand up and learn stuff and share stuff and engage with them and do marvelous things together. That's what he's looking for.
And I never thought, before we close, I never thought that I could see the whole picture from start to finish with such clarity as this.
Yes.
The last month has just been, I know I haven't been doing much in the last month, but I'm listening all the time. And I'm going, wow, and I'm reading this and reading the stuff you send me, and I'm going, that's phenomenal.
You know what the most phenomenal part of what you just said is?
Huh?
Is that the clarity in terms of counsel on the entire picture and framing the issue from beginning to end.
Yes.
That is a derivative. It's totally based on etz, as etz becomes etzah, and etz is the Hebrew word for tree. And as etzah, this spiritual manifestation of this tree, that is the counsel on the entire story. So the etzah, dayath, which is the Choder's manifestation of the Etz Diath, is in fact the provider of counsel and advice on the entire story from beginning to end. That's what the words mean.
This is wonderful.
When God tells a story and he was actually able to invent the language that he used to tell the story, his metaphors and symbols and words, they speak volumes, don't they?
Really.
There's a reason that he wanted us to use amplified translations. Yeah. And this is one of the great examples of how the Etz Diath, the tree of knowledge, is then represented through the Choder as the Etza Diath. And it is the ability to have knowledge regarding the entire story from beginning to end.
Yeah.
When I researched that word Etza, my head nearly spun around on its axis.
Yes. And to see it in the story with the Choder, and then the Choder is, we're told he is masculine singular, and that he has he becomes para, that he is rooted in the ground, that he is known as a netzar, which is an observant branch, that he is deeply rooted, and ultimately he becomes para, which means fruitful. And that's the presentation of the Choder. Yeah.
Shabbat Towrah. You cultivate the seeds, and then you sow the seeds.
Yeah, the Choder is the tree of knowledge. He's the embodiment of the tree of knowledge. That is the story that Yah was telling. And that by itself is one of the most profound insights, because the prophecy regarding the Choder is one of the most powerful prophecies anywhere ever told. And now we know exactly who the Choder is. He is the tree of knowledge. And we now know what the Adama Para is, because the roots are in the Adama that bears para, fruit. The whole story is God is the ultimate storyteller. He is the ultimate teacher. All he was looking for is a good student.
Well done. Thank you.
Well, so thank you. I mean, yes, such a pleasure to work for. And it's amazing too that Yahowah is not a teacher who's doing this in a manner of, I'll teach you the material and then that my job is done. Yahowah is a very engaged teacher, where he is excited by, he is thrilled by his students. When his student learns and shares, and then others benefit by what his student has learned, and then they share, this causes Yahowah to not only be pleased and satisfied and happy that it was possible for someone to do this, but he gives all the credit to the dadgone tree, rather than Yahowah saying, "Yeah, well, I did this. I was the one who shared all of this information, so that it made it possible."
Yeah.
No, he's saying, "See, look at this tree. Isn't this marvelous? With what happens when somebody does this?" And that's why, here's God. He's the creator of the universe. He's in the first chapter of his story, and he's talking about these two luminaries, and he says they're both great. They're esteemed. I'm proud of them both. It's just the nature of God. He's so excited and so happy and so thrilled when we get it.
Yeah.
That he wants to share credit. That tells you what we have in store when we finally leave this planet, and God gets to share this voyage of discovery with us throughout the universe, throughout dimensions 4, 5, 6, 7, and I think even 8 eventually, that God gets to say, ain't it fun that we're able to do this together? And if we actually were to best him in the design of the platypus, he's going to be ecstatic for us. I mean, he actually would like to be bested. That's what he's telling you.
Craig, he epitomizes what a father is. He is the ultimate
Yes.
ultimate Abba.
Yes. Yeah, you're happier as a father when your child exceeds what you've been able to accomplish because of everything that you've offered them and taught them and given to them. When a child fails to follow in your footsteps and take advantage of what you have, it's a heartache. But when your child takes it the next step and goes beyond what you have established in the family business, there's no greater sense of pride. That's why Yahowah so loves Dowd. He's the epitome of that. He was about the family business. So, gentlemen, that includes you too, Wookie.
Wookie's going, that was a long outro.
Wow, that was a long one, Dad. I'll get up. Here I am. I'm coming over to you now. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your endurance in this long program. But that's what God's looking for. He's looking for endurance. And I'm delighted that we're surrounded now by a family that is in it for the long haul and is devoted to the cause. And I thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Happy
Shalom.
Shabbat.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.